你好。
Hello，你好。
我的汉语不好的，所以我说英语。Okay, so very sorry, I can't speak better Chinese. What I'm going to do today is chat with you about PopCap's experience building mobile games, and we'll talk in particular about lessons learned building Plants vs. Zombies. How many people here have played Plants vs. Zombies? Great, so I don't need to introduce this game. It is our most popular game we ever built. It's the fastest selling game we built. And what I'll do today is talk about our experiences adapting it for mobile, and then talk about some other lessons we learned with mobile. So just some quick examples. These are just a very short list of some of the awards that we won for this game. It's a very popular game, not only on the PC, but also on mobile phone. We've won many awards on iPhone, iPad, and other devices. Just a quick sampling of some examples of its popularity. For example, here in China, one of my favorites, this video was from some students in Harbin who created their own video of the game, which is great. You can find it on Tudo or other video sites. And of course, this one is actually from the Harbin Ice Festival. We found some people made a giant snow sculpture for PVZ. So it's a very popular game. And then of course we launched the iPhone version. Now, how many people here have played this on the iPhone or the iPad? Wow, okay, almost as many. So actually on the iPad is my favorite version of the game. I think it's actually most fun on the iPad compared to the PC or even the iPhone. So let's talk about some of the lessons we learned making it. So actually one thing that's interesting, when we launched it on the iPhone, we made more than $1 million in just the first week of sales, which was a record for both PopCap, but also a record for the iPhone. And what this is showing sales on the iPhone and the iPad in Asia. And what's interesting is the red here is China, Greater China. The blue is Australia. In the month of March, we made more money or sold more copies in China on the iPhone and iPad than anywhere else in Asia. And that's really unusual. I mean, we've never made money selling games in China. It's just, piracy is too high. But to see how well it's done on iPhone is actually very interesting to us. And so, yeah, this is a quick chart. You know, even above, for example, Japan, down here at the bottom, Singapore, and then, yeah, that's China. So very interesting. And the growth here, is because of continued sales of the platform. And so the game went on sale, and then it peaked, went down, and then as more units are sold, it's gone up. In fact, another data point, when the iPhone 4 went on sale a few weeks ago, we had China became the #2 country worldwide for sales of PVZ. So #1 was US, and then #2 was China, thanks to the iPhone 4 launch. So I guess everyone who bought an iPhone 4 must have gone out and bought PVZ, which we love to see. That's wonderful. Okay, so a couple lessons. So how do you make a successful mobile game? Well, okay, build a great game. Right? That's easy. Okay, go home now. You've learned your lessons. Build a great game. Now, of course, it's harder than that. Building a great game is not easy. And there's a couple of lessons a couple of things we do at PopCap that we take very seriously. One of them is you need to be willing to innovate. Right? You can't just copy other games and be successful. Now, copying other games is less risky, and you can do okay with that, but you're never going to create a #1 game by copying other games. The best games, the #1 games, are almost always original or fresh or different for some reason. For example, Angry Birds. Who's played Angry Birds on the iPhone? Angry Birds. Okay, it's not a PopCap game, but it's a good game. Angry Birds is doing very well. It's still #1. There's so many copies of Angry Birds now. There's different art, different story, none of them doing very well. So the first rule is you have to be willing to take creative risks. And then, once you have an idea, be willing to keep, we call polish. Iterate, polish and polish and polish. Keep making version after version after version until you're happy with it. And don't ship it until you really love it yourself. I think the biggest mistake developers make is they ship products before they're ready. And I know why. It's very tempting to ship once it gets to be pretty good. Pretty good is not good enough. You've got to really make it perfect. Plants vs. Zombies took 3 years to make. That's a very long time for a casual game. And after year number 2, our CEO said, it's great, it's a wonderful game, ship it. And the developer said, no, we're not ready yet. And it took a whole another year before it was ready to ship. And after that, the CEO said that was one of the biggest mistakes he made, was saying it was time to ship after 2 years, because he realized that the extra year of polish made it so much better that it became the classic game that it is now. So let me show you some examples. So this is a screenshot of probably the first prototype built for PvZ, or the game that eventually became PvZ. So this was actually called, the first version was called Weedlings. And the idea of Weedlings was that you were going to plant these plants. So these are plants you're going to plant, and eventually the plants will grow up. And when the plants grow up, then they can start to fight the bad guys. And here you see some artwork from Insane Aquarium, because that was one of the developer who made PvZ also made Insane Aquarium, so he was reusing artwork. But the idea was going to be insects versus plants, was the original idea. And he built this prototype back in 2005. And guess what? It wasn't very fun. Why wasn't it fun? Because waiting for these plants to grow up was really boring. And so in this original version, you would plant these seeds, you have to wait and wait and wait, eventually they grow up, and then they can start to fight. So he realized by building this prototype that that was boring, that you should plant the seeds and right away start to fight. So that was an example of a very important lesson that we learned by playing an early prototype. And so that's really key. So this was the next early version. And let me actually show you, I have a live demo of this build. Let me actually show that to you. And this will also give you an example of how we build our games. A couple things. You'll notice here. See that icon? Who can recognize that icon? Anyone? Okay, that's Insane Aquarium icon. And in fact, the game, you can notice the prototype still says Insane Aquarium at the top. So in this early version, the game mechanic is that you actually have to pick cards and put them in your deck. Like this. And once you pick your cards, it will randomly choose cards for you to play based on these probabilities. So for example, we play. And it's going to pick cards for me randomly. So I have to wait for cards to appear. plant here, but I can't because I'm waiting for parts. Now you get the idea. So this is an early prototype. Okay, so it's another early prototype, and that prototype taught us that this random mechanic of the cards coming in randomly is not fun either, right? And that's why at PopCap we almost never create design documents. We almost never write down on paper a game design, because you don't know if it's going to be fun until you play it. And even the best game designer in the world, George Fan, the guy who created PZ, thought this would be fun. And then he built it, started playing it, and realized, no, it's not fun. And so you have to play a game to realize it's going to be fun enough. And so, a lot of things he got right, even at his early stage. So the idea of sunflowers and plants and zombies and the basic art style, I mean, that's all still there in the final game. But there's also a lot of elements at this early stage that are not good enough. And that was an important lesson we learned from this early prototype. And here's another lesson from the early game. This was a build from around 2007. And by 2007, the game was already looking pretty good. So here you can see the background is the same, the UI is mostly right, the zombie art style is basically done. So there's a lot of things that are right about this. But there's one major problem with the game. Take a look at the pricing. I don't know if you can read it. Here, the sunflower is 100, and the pea shooter is 100. Okay? And that's a huge problem. Because what was happening was brand new players were playing the game, and they didn't understand the economy. They did not understand the importance of first planting a lot of sunflowers and then planting the pea shooters. So what was happening was brand new players were getting money. They were earning 100 sunflowers. And given a choice between a sunflower or the pea shooter, they were planting pea shooters. And so new players were building levels like this one, where it's all pea shooters, not enough sunflowers. And as a result, they were losing. And they didn't understand the game. It was too hard for them. And so the design team had a lot of questions. How to fix this problem? How are we going to teach players how important it is to plant the sunflowers first? And one idea was a tutorial, right? For a lot of game designers, the first answer is always tutorial, right? If the player doesn't understand something, we'll add a tutorial. But that's bad design. A tutorial is like trying to fix a design issue with a Band-Aid. It's not a very good solution. So they did some more thinking. So, well, what if you're only allowed to plant sunflowers on the left? What if there's a certain area of the screen where you can only plant sunflowers? But finally, the solution they came up with was simple. Change the price. Make sunflowers 50, make pea shooters 100, and then what will naturally happen is that new players will start planting more sunflowers first. And you won't plant your first pea shooter until after you've earned enough money that your pea shooter hasn't recharged fast enough before you plant more sunflowers. And that's what they did, and it turned out to solve the problem. So this is a very small change that affected the entire playability of the game for new players.